Yeah, welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Braka Yurthgreen the 5th. Of course it is. My name is Adam, and I'm going to give you my review of Knights of the Crown by Roland Green. Now, I would like to take a moment and thank the Dale Saga members and invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the link in the description below. You can even pick up DragonLance gaming material using my affiliate links, and those are also in the description below, and they just go to help the channel out a wee bit. So if you want to help a wee bit, consider it. And if not, that's okay too. Let's just talk a little Dragonlance and have some fun, right? It's Saturday. What do we got going on? I already did my yard work for the day, which was like hours that I did not anticipate, but I had a great time doing it. I'm one of those people that actually enjoys getting out in their yard. And I don't know. It was nice. Rip Cloud. I didn't know they were hard to find. I just did the audiobooks because I kind of have to nowadays. But there's actually 4 with this series. There's this, Sword, then Rose, and then there's the Wayward Knights, which are all in the Warriors series. There's 7 books in the Warriors series, which is actually a break. Usually the Dragonlance stuff comes in 3s. So 3s or 6s, of course. In any case, let's talk about Knights of the Crown. Let's start with, Chris, 100%. False advertising. Let's start with the cover, first of all. I've heard a lot of people talk smack about the cover, like, what is that, a lightsaber? I come from playing paladins in Dungeons & Dragons, so I believe in something called the Holy Avenger. That's not a lightsaber, that's a Holy Avenger, in my interpretation. So that's not the weird thing. And it's epic, like a paladin or a knight jumping down to like strike this red dragon on the face or the neck with his Holy Avenger. That's badass. The problem is that's not in this book at all. In fact, there's no dragon in this book, and there's no knight that does anything but sit around and like pontificate for 3 pages in this book, period. There's no knights in this book. This is not a book about Knights of the Crown at all. So if you're coming into this book thinking, I like the Knights of Solamnia, let me get into it. Don't do that. This started with Michael Williams with his Galen Benighted thing. That's not fair either, because this started with King Arthur, and I think it was Sir Gawain. He was originally like a thief in one of the story versions, and he like was trying to steal. And I'm going off of the movie, but I think it was also in the short stories, in some versions of the short stories. The King Arthur mythos is very much like modern day comic hero mythos, where it's reimagined depending on the person telling it. But I think there was a version where Sir Gawain was originally a thief trying to steal from Lancelot, and Lancelot ended up bringing him on as a squire, and he ended up becoming a Knight of the Round Table, and he ended up being the most famous Knight of the Round Table. And so the idea of a thief turned knight is infinitely older than Dragonlance, which is where I think the Galen Pathwarden with Galen Benighted and Weasel's Luck started with Michael Williams, and where this Pirvan the Spell Thief turned Knight of the Crown in this 4-book series started with Roland Green. They're ripping off the King Arthur stories. And let's be honest, King Arthur stories are great. So if you're going to rip something off, rip off the good stuff. So I like on the surface level, I'm here for it, but I've already read it a couple times. I don't need to revisit it again. And I don't know why they keep going back to this thief turn knight. Can we not just have a story about knights being knights? Like, is that boring to some people? They just don't think there's a story there? Because I could think of like 7 story beats in the next 10 minutes that would be interesting and could extrapolate into novels. I don't know why we can't just do that, especially if you're going to title it Knight of the Crown, and you got a cover image like this. what the F? Like, just, if, talk about false advertising. If you're going to give us something, give us at least a facsimile of what you're promising. I know we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but everyone does. It's normal. It's human. Yes, we do it. This is a lie. It's a flat out lie. Giggles the Clown. Your name will never not freak me out. What do you think of them getting rid of the old artists for the original books? Well, they didn't go to AI with the new ones. If you're talking about the Destinies trilogy, I've actually interviewed the artist of the Destinies trilogy on this channel, actually, when the first one came out. What do I think about it? Wizards of the Coast was never going to have Elmore do the covers, so he was never fired. I understand that there's YouTube channels that like to make hyperbole and salacious stories. Larry Elmore was never a choice for the new trilogy. And in fact, if you wanted to go in sequential order, it would have been another artist that I have interviewed on this channel. Now I'm embarrassed because he's an amazing, talented artist. And he did all the late era Dragonlance novel covers. Matt Stoicki. Fantastic artist. He's got some stinkers like every artist, but fantastic artist. He would have been the next to do it. But Wizards of the Coast is not looking to recreate Dragonlance. They didn't even want to put out the latest Dragonlance trilogy at all. In fact, it took Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman suing the company to get them to release the novels. And so I'm not surprised that they didn't want to go with a traditional artist of Stoicki or Elmore or Parkinson or anyone else. They couldn't do Parkinson, but anyone else, because they don't give a damn. Wizards of the Coast has never given a damn. They do lip service. Oh, Dragonlance is my favorite, blah. But they don't do anything to maintain the integrity of Dragonlance. They don't give a damn about the IP. All they care about, and you can know this for a fact based on what they've released, is Forgotten Realms. Full stop. They don't care about anything else. And that's because Forgotten Realms is a garbage dump of you can do anything, anywhere, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's no special anything to it. It's just a generic dumping ground of fantasy. And I know people who love Forgotten Realms, you're going to get all butthurt, but this is a Dragonlance channel. What do you want from me? Really? What do you want? In any case, I don't buy the whole they fired Elmore. He was never in the reign. They couldn't afford him. They don't want to spend money on this stuff. They don't even want to release it. So they go with the cheapest option. They get an independent artist who, let's be honest, environmentally is a great artist. When it comes to people, not the best. And I don't think he would argue with that either. That's not what he does. And so, look, all you have to do is look at the art at the beginning of every chapter and look at where it came from. It was all stock art. None of it was custom designed like it was in the old days. It was all from stock photography sites. Wizard of the Coast doesn't care. They don't care about the books. They don't care about the IP. They don't care about anything. They just want the Skrilla. And they're not going to get it from a bunch of nerds like us who are hyper fans of an IP that they want to bury. And that's just the reality of it. It sucks. I don't like it, but they haven't shown anything but that as an opinion. So I have to take them at their face value, It actually drives me nuts, but that's the truth of it. Chris, this was definitely a romance novel. And the thing is I like romance, so I didn't mind that aspect of it. But you can't tell me that I'm going to have cheesecake and then give me a Hershey fun size bite and expect me to be happy. Like if you told me I was getting like a Hershey little chocolate bite, all right, I dig it. I like chocolate. I'm a human. What do you want? But you tell me I'm going to get cheesecake and then you give me Hershey, of course I'm going to be disappointed. You tell me this is about Knights of the Crown and it's about a thief, yeah, I'm going to be a little bummed. Of course, because it's not what you told me it was, jackass. That's what this was. This was a lie. You're hoping to learn more about the early days of Solamnic Knights. Well, here's the thing. One of the strengths, I think, of this book was that it talked about the Knights of Solamnia. Well, it talked about an era of history that has not really been discussed before. So this was the reign of Istar after the Third Dragon War. We don't get a lot of that. We had the King Priest trilogy, which was hyper focused on the King Priest, of course, and the courts of Istar and the Knights of the Divine Hammer and Cathan Twiceborn, and that was great. But it was hyper focused on Istar. This is before that time. We don't have stories of that. And so it was really nice revisiting an era that I say revisiting, but I should say visiting an era that we've never really talked about, that has wild implications and that was wildly contextualized by future novels, but by the time this was released, had never been discussed before. And so we never knew what it was like in the world of pre-Fall of Istar, post-Third Dragon War before. And this story is set squarely in that time. And that, I think, is the strength of this story. We get a lot of really great talk about nations that don't exist anymore, about cultures and the way people engage with each other that simply was not a thing in later novels or earlier novels, because this is a brand new era of storytelling when it was released. And that's, I think, is the greatest part of this. All right, Ash, Ash, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. You had hard enough time getting any one of your players interested in playing Dragonlance campaign. That's a bummer, because there's so many great stories to tell in Dragonlance. If you want to hyper focus on the war element, you can do that, but you don't have to. You have so many eras that are so wildly different to play in. If you want like a hyper specialized campaign setting that is super different from any other era, you get that with Dragonlance. And I think that's the strength of Dragonlance. And I think people cut it short because when they think Dragonlance, they typically think War of the Lance. And they think that, well, it's just a war campaign. And it's not always that. And I think this story specifically focuses on that aspect of it. Though it was a bait and switch of a headline versus story, it wasn't a terrible story. So hopefully your players will be open to it. And then you can tell them, you can weave a wonderful narrative for them. And aloha from Hawaii. That's dope. I've never been. Always wanted to go. Hiking in Hawaii is one of my bucket list items, for sure. Australia. Adam, how you doing? That's awesome. Love the books. That's awesome. Australia is another place I'd love to go. But the flight time, let's be honest, is prohibitive. I think it's like a 24-hour trip for me to get to you. And that is just on a plane in a tiny little seat. Ugh, F that. I'll have to just move there. That's the only option because I can't do there and back. It'd be too much. Let's see. Derek, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. All right. So the Fifth Age is a great setting and backdrop for a campaign. All right. But this is very weird. Not the Fifth Age. This is way before the Cataclysm. So totally different era. You wanted to use Matt Colville's Kingdoms and Warfare rules in Dragonlance. I don't even know what that is. I'll have to look into that. I'm not familiar. All right, so let's talk about the story a little bit, since this is supposed to be a review. I listened to this as I was going to and from work for a week, and it was tough. As some people have reviewed this, they say the book is actually done in a style of Old English, which is why it's so convoluted in its narrative. And that there's a lot of parenthetical inner monologues of Pirvan, which are difficult to even understand and differentiate from the narrative if you're reading it. And so imagine if you're just hearing it while you're driving. To know the difference between his thoughts versus what's actually happening in the world is really challenging. And it makes it a convoluted experience to listen to and to try to latch onto the story. The characters are so interconnected that I kept mixing them up throughout the whole narrative. And I was like, wait, is he with her? Why is she going with him? What the hell is going on? And why is he always getting naked? Like, what the hell? Like, the first 20 pages of this novel is Pirvan just getting naked a lot and like rubbing grease on him. And look, if you're into that, hats off. I'm not going to shame anyone for what they dig. It was just too much for me is all. And I was just like, why? Just put a damn shirt on and leave it on. Why do you think lubing yourself up is going to help you get through a canyon? It seems like it would be a hindrance. It wouldn't help you. I don't understand. Like, some of the choices in this novel, like the dialogue, the jokes, the sexual innuendo, it's there. It doesn't ever really land. And it feels like this is the first outing. I didn't look into the author, Roland Green, and see if this is one of his first novels, but it certainly feels like it. And if it's not, woof. Choose a different profession, man, because this is rough. And I'm curious to read the other 3 novels now, because do they get better? Do they get worse? Like, is this as good as it gets? Like, what the hell? What's going on? So this is basically bookended, this story. It's bookended with knights complaining that there's like not enough knights anymore. And there's not enough, like, if you reflect back to DLA, Dragonlance Adventures, to be a Knight of the Rose, you have to be born into the Knights of Solamnia. You have to have a historical family ancestry, or else you just cannot be a Rose Knight, period. And you can become a Knight of Solamnia if you pass certain tests, but this is an era where the Knights were sort of dwindling because the power of Istar and the Knights of the Divine Hammer were encapsulating Solamnia. And they were sort of like pushing them down, like they weren't good enough. Like they're good knights, but they're not as good as our knights. And so Istar was completely shutting down all of the rest of, the northern hemisphere of, I shouldn't say northern hemisphere, the northern half of Ansalon, but like Ergoth and Solamnia specifically. They were like the hub of action in the world. And so to see the Knights of Solamnia in this time really reflecting on that and being like, look, we need some people here. Like we just don't have the numbers anymore. And so we have to be imaginative about how we're getting knights. And so what's revealed at the very end of this novel is that they actually have agents that go out into the world and scout for knights. And in this era of Dragonlance history, in this time, it made sense that they would do that. And arguably, in the word lance, it would make sense that they would do it then as well. But you would have to think of imaginative ways of drawing people into the knighthood, which up until that point has been stuffy, very pinky in the air, nose in the air. If you're not one of us, you're against us type mentality. And so I didn't mind that aspect of it, though it was a little bit sort of on the nose and unexpected when they finally dropped it in the last couple pages of this book, where you're just like, oh, that's why the whole thing was going on? That's weird. Like, why wouldn't you tell us that beforehand? It was almost like an afterthought. Like they're like, oh, we got to round this out and remind people that this is about Knights of the Crown because that's the title. So it was a little bit weird on that part. It's MCDM. Okay. Let's see. You never said this about a Dragonlance novel before you found yourself bored. Not a lot happened in the middle. There was a lot of pontificating in this novel for sure. Let's see. Socrates. I'm sorry. I watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure a lot, so I always say Socrates for some reason because I'm an idiot, is what it comes down to. So Socrates, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Wizards now run by gully dwarves. I don't know what that's referencing. Engine Joe, how you doing, man? You're begging to be made fun of. Pez misplaces the knights, rubbing oils with bacon grease as a joke. Yeah, that was weird. There's also regular inconsistencies about magic. There's a point where a wizard heals someone in this. And then like a thief is using magic, but there's no reference to like Wizards of High Sorcery or whether he's a member of the orders. He just uses magic like right out the gate. And I understand like from a gaming perspective, if you're going to be like, no, he's only like 3rd level. So he never took the test and it doesn't matter. Okay, well that's a gaming thing and that makes sense in gaming rules. But if you're doing a novel and there's no semblance of the gaming element, and one of the strong points of Dragonlance is that in this era, magic is wildly controlled, then why would you not bring it up? Because that's what will make it a hyper-specific Dragonlance novel. And you don't even have to go into it. You just have to be like, oh yeah, he took a test once and it effed him up in some way. Like, that's it. And it's understandable, and you certainly make this like completely different dimensional connection with the character that is hyper specific to Dragonlance, and it feels grounded in the IP and in your it is great. They don't do that. Of course not. Why would they? I don't know. It's frustrating. This book was frustrating. And I want to love it because I love the Knights of Solamnia desperately. I don't even know why I like them. I just do. Like probably too much. But yeah. Anyway, Aragoth was the birth of Solamnic culture, 100%. Vinus Solamnus was the one who in the War of Ice Tears or something like that. It's been a little bit. He split away. Basically, the Emperor of Aragoth sent Vinus Solamnus and like one of his units to go stifle this rebellion. And when Vinus got there, he saw how horribly Aragoth was treating them, that he was just like, all right, I work for a dick. I'm sorry, guys. Like, I see it now. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. I'm gonna help you. We're going to sue for peace. We're going to get this guy to get off your back, but we're going to have to go to war to do it. You guys ready for that? And they were just like, yeah, bro, like we're here. Like, all right, let's do it. And so this is a super distilled version, but that's basically what happened. And that's how Solamnia was born. And that's why Vinus Solamnus was seen as like the father of Solamnic culture, even though he wasn't. It was because he was an agent of Aragoth, and he ended up becoming a traitor because of how horribly these people were treated. And I would like to think that any of us in any given moment, if we witnessed atrocities, no matter how entrenched we were socio-religious, politically with any group, if we witnessed atrocities, we'd be like, yeah, that's effed up. We should probably not do that. Just as a human thing. You know what I mean? Just as like breaking beyond teams that we assign each other to or that we claim for ourselves. We're just like, that's too far. You know? Just as human to human. That's too far. But again, I dream. Let's see. You remember the Brotherhood of Steel are mentioned in one of the main books? Well, that was at the end of the War of the Lance. So thousands of years after this book. Let's see. What else? It bugs you about the dragon and mages having heal magic. Yeah, super weird stuff, man. Super weird stuff about... That's one of the things that's super hyper-specific to Dragonlance. And you're just going to be willy-nilly with it? It was very strange. In any case, okay, the setup is this. Pirvan, and this is another thing that bothers me, a trope that just drives me insane. And I've had players like this. They play a thief, but they don't want to be someone who steals from other people. Well, why are you a thief then? It's in the name, man. It's in the name. You're a thief. You steal things that do not belong to you. That's the point of the class. That's why they're super sneaky. And like, that's the thing. It's that or assassin. There's no good side to it. So I don't understand the whole mantra of, no, I'm a thief, but I'm an honorable thief. I don't kill people. I only steal from them on occasion. You know, so I can have my internet paid for. What are you doing? I've had players. They're just like, no, I'm a thief, but I don't steal. Okay. So what's your character then? That's what this was. Pirvan the Spell Thief, who was not part of the Order of High Sorcery, who was an honorable thief, who didn't kill people. All right. That's okay, whatever. I'll accept it. It makes no sense to me, but I'll accept it. He ends up stealing what ends up being a dowry for this noble woman. But the dowry itself ends up being revealed to be ransom money, or to be used as ransom money, not a dowry, in order to pay off someone who stole her boyfriend / betrothed / bodyguard. Ransom money for the betrothed of her bodyguard and friend Hamaya. So it's like it's her boyfriend basically. So she was going to use what Pirvan stole in order to get back this dude that she loved. Pirvan finds out about it, and he's an honorable thief, and so he tries to give it back to her, and she then ropes him into going with her on this adventure to go find him and save him. And this adventure takes him to basically a sea voyage. Like, this whole book is just a sea voyage. It could very easily be turned into like a Sinbad the Sailor. I don't know if you guys used to watch Sinbad movies as a kid. I did. Like, Hercules and Sinbad movies. They were awesome, by the way. If you want to trip down memory lane, they're fantastic. But it's basically that. And look, I'm not mad at it. I love piracy stories. Dragonlance is a great setting for pirate stories. We have entire continents, like little islands of cultures dedicated solely to this, and it's great. So I love that it was, I just expect it to be a Knights of Solamnia story. All right, so they go basically on this high seas adventure where they're fighting, they're like hanging out with a bunch of Argothians and sea barbarians, and they're fighting a bunch of minotaurs, and then the group splits up where Pirvan meets up with this dragon, this good dragon that for some reason has just hung around after Huma banished all dragons. And then because there's a good dragon, there has to be a bad dragon because it's Dragonlance, so there has to be a balance. And the bad dragon's not really a bad dragon. He's a black dragon. He's working with this evil wizard guy who he doesn't really even like. And he doesn't really want to do what the evil wizard guy wants him to do. And so he kind of starts working with the good dragon guy. It's very strange. Like, this is a strange ass story. And I hope I'm getting it right, because if I'm getting it right, it's even stranger than if I got it wrong. Because it's out there. And there's like this play fighting that goes on between the dragons where it just skims over, they've been fighting so long that the good dragon is now tired and the evil dragon can now have the upper hand, but he doesn't take it. Like, it's so, like, the writing in this is horrible. I really don't think the author knows anything about writing, because the way he's formulating sentences in some cases makes zero sense at all. Like, you're like listening to it and it makes no sense. And you think, well, maybe it's the author, the performer reading it in a strange way. And no, it's written the way that they're saying it, and it's just written poorly. And so it comes off very odd. The whole thing is totally messed up. All right, so they end up finding the betrothed, and he ends up dying, but only after the woman who was going to find her betrothed swears herself to a sea barbarian because she fell in love with him as they were like fighting off minotaurs all the time. So she's going on a mission to save a man that she's going to marry, and she falls in love with the sea barbarian, swears herself to him, and then still goes through with saving this man, who then dies in her arms. And then the sea barbarian finally finds her at the end of the book, and he's like, I understand you were sort of into me. I get it. I'm kind of badass. But, I don't want to hold you to that because you were emotional, and I know how you women get. So, we don't have to do this whole marriage thing. And she's like, shut your mouth. We're doing this, sucker. And being a little hyperbolic here, but that's basically it. Like the sass is real with their like, it's almost like, it's like Lando Calrissian if he would have nailed Princess Leia, and then Princess Leia being like, yeah, I want that D. Like, we're doing this thing. It's that overt. The sass and love. It's ridiculous. I mean, this is way before AI, but that would make sense if that was what it was. All right, so the Pirvan goes through all this stuff, and they're like hurt and almost dying, and the dragon's almost dying, and the dragon's like helping them, and they ended up like fighting off the black dragon, and the evil guy is like defeated, and there's like this weird injection of making frost reavers, which is, if for those of you who remember Dragons of Winter Night, or Dragons of the High Lord Skies, it's this, or Dragons of Ice, I think it was, DL6. Basically, it's just this magical item that is formulated by ice barbarians that is made purely of ice, but it has magical properties and it won't melt. It's just this ice property. It's a magic item. In the game, it'll actually melt if you go in hotter climates. In this book, it doesn't melt at all. But they go in this weird like explanation of it being made, which I guess is kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's like out of nowhere, and it has no bearing on the story at all. Like, I don't even know why they went into it. It's so strange. So anyway, and in the end, Pirvan is like really endearing himself to this friend Hamia of this like fancy, like royalty lady, the sort of handmaiden. And it ends up where they like separate, and she's like, if I ever need to find you, be somewhere where I can find you. And then Pirvan's like, okay, I guess, okay. I don't know what that means or how to do that, but okay. And then he ends up like they do like this whole series of pages of him getting out of weight, like just gaining a whole bunch of weight and like drinking a whole lot and just becoming this slob almost. And then she comes back into his life, like shockingly. She just knocks on his door one day, and it's this robed figure in the door. And he's like, who are you? And she's like, take me, sailor. I mean, she doesn't literally say that, but she like flips back her hood. She's like, are you going to help me off with my cloak? And he's like, yeah, I will. And the author's like, but it didn't stop at the cloak. And then they went to bed together. And they like had this like sexual encounter, which was horribly written. And then this knight shows up at their door. And the knight's like, hello, I am a knight. And I think you should be a knight too. And she, the person that you just effed, she is looking for knights. And I think that's why she effed you. And so that's why the book is named this. Goodbye. And that's the book. That's the whole ending. It's this craziest freaking ending of a book ever. So at the very beginning, it's this knight going like, hey, we need more knights. And people like, we can't just have knights. We have to have honorable knights. And then it cuts to this thief and his story. And then it cuts to this woman and her trying to save this other guy. And then it cuts to them splitting up with this dragon and trying to fight this black dragon. And then it cuts to them coming back together. And then the knight comes back and he's like, tag, you're it. You're a knight. And that's literally the story. It's so insane that it's like a fever dream. Like you didn't even really read it. You just had this bad flu that like put you in bed for 3 days. And then you came out of it and you're like, wow, that was a weird story. But it's actually like a novel. It's so messed up, man. All right. So I love me some sea barbarians. So that's cool. I love me some minotaurs. So seeing minotaurs attack and they like saved a minotaur and the minotaur was like, I've got to like you now because you saved me and I'm honorable. But nothing ever comes of it. And then I like the evil mages, but nothing ever comes of that. Nothing ever comes of the brass and black dragon. Like, I don't even understand why that was even a thing. It was just a vehicle for Pirvan to fall in love with this woman. And it didn't even really seem believable because they just kept getting hurt. And then they couldn't heal each other because for some reason there should be healing in this time, but there's no healing unless you're a wizard, apparently. Or even the dragon was just like, I'll heal you a little, but I can't really do a lot. Why can you do any? That's not how magic works. You can't just like whisk up a Twix because you're hungry. That's not how it works, man. It's like the only great line in the sequel trilogy of Star Wars was when Finn was just like, we're going to use the Force. And Han was like, that's not how the Force works. That's not how magic works in this book. But that's how he does it in the book. So it just jumps back and forth between these two groups, like page after page. And while you're listening to it, it's very confusing because there's no indication until they say a name of where they are in the story. And so you have to do this mental jump back and forth between these split groups that are having different adventures. So it's a little bit confusing in that. The fact that mages can heal early on, but not later on is wildly confusing. And so it's just the whole story just felt total BS and not really Dragonlance at all. And certainly not Knights of Solamnia or Knights of the Crown at all. And so I can only assume that this was meant to be a prelude to the actual Knights story. But then if that were the case, why is it called this? Why not just wait till the next one and have it called that? And then you can move forward with the story. I don't know, man. So ultimately, I was very disappointed with this novel. Not because of the story, which was awkward and not very good, but it wasn't as bad as I ended up thinking it was because it's not what I was told it was. And so I reflected more negatively on it than maybe it deserved. I'm going to have to listen to it again to find out for sure. Let's see. The Emperor is allied with Solamnia, but most of the barbarians up north are called acolytes. Yeah, I mean, they're primitive versions of themselves. Wasn't the head of the White Robes at the time a wizard pirate of the White Robes? There was a wizard pirate when Palin took his test that I thought was a really great character choice. But the head of the White Robes, I mean, clearly there have been more heads of the White Robes throughout the ages, so I'm not sure which one you're referring to. But it was Parsalian in the majority of the War of the Lance era. And after in the Legends era. Let's see. You got City of Delights. Take Tansel around in the desert for a magic carpet ride. Yeah. It's a whole new world. Let's see. TSR book department got overwhelmed during the early 90s, and it shows 100%. Bronze Dragon was the best part, not saying much. You always enjoyed the relationship between good dragons and mortals in Dragonlance. I especially liked dragons that were super talkative, like the Bronze Dragons. Like, they liked interacting with mortals of Krynn, so much so that they would trap you. Like, they would actually confine you so that they could have like a conversation with you or interaction with you. I always liked that because you have to question, are they really good if they're taking away your free will so that they can just have a conversation or experience some new thing in life? That doesn't sound like a good thing to me. That's called kidnapping or abduction. That's not a good thing. It's not what good people do, but apparently good dragons do it, and so we're okay with it. But I like that complexity up, we'll say. We'll use that word. It's interesting. It's fun. What you're saying is don't read this. Yeah, Arash, I'm saying if you want a Knight of the Crown story, don't read this. If you want a weird pirate romance story, definitely read it. Because it's definitely a weird pirate romance story, which on its face is not a bad thing. Just know that's what it is going in. You might enjoy it more thinking that. And don't think of Dragonlance, just think generic fantasy, and you'll enjoy it much more. I've read a lot of terrible fantasy books, but I've enjoyed them because they're just fantasy. If this was just a fantasy book, I would have enjoyed it much more, rather than a Dragonlance Knight of the Crown titled book. Let's see. Has Knights of the Crown and Rose. Other books don't concern these characters, if you remember. Shalafi, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. I think they're supposed to. I think the whole 4-book series is supposed to be about Pirvan the thief that becomes the Knight of the Rose? I don't know because I haven't read them at all. Like, I remember reading this as a kid, but I didn't remember the story at all. Because when I was listening to it the whole time, I was just like, what? 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 The whole time. It's crazy. Is there a Dragonlance book called Tales from Uncle Trapspringer? Yes, there is. There is an Uncle Trapspringer book. I have not read it. I have seen it. The cover. That's it. That's all I know about it. And there's an article, and actually for those of you who are members of this channel, I do member-only readings weekly. And there's in the Tales of Legends of the Lance newsletter, which is a 5th Age era newsletter that TSR / WotC released during the Saga system days of Dragonlance. They had a whole article of Ask Uncle Trapspringer, and it would be his response. They only did it in a couple of them. It was his response to questions that people would send in. And of course, it was like a Kender response to questions, Uncle Trapspringer. But a little fun. Silly, ridiculous, but a little bit of fun, you know? So if you like Kender and you like Trapspringer, check it out. Let's see. Got to take them as you find them. Then you got to teach them. Yeah, as far as like the Dragonlance stuff goes, there's always something good to find in the books. Even if the book itself does not live up to your expectation, there are aspects of it that later game designers or later authors will include moments of it to help contextualize a different story. So, for example, the King Priest trilogy. I can't help but think that the era that this novel was written in influenced some of the decisions that Pearson made when he was writing the King Priest trilogy, because it's literally an era that had never been written about before. And it had been inferred like what was going on, but it was never actually like put down on paper. And for me, as someone who loves Dragonlance lore and history, that's the strength of this novel and the strength of bad Dragonlance novels, is that the bad ones generally try to do something that's a little bit too out there and they just they don't stick the landing, but there's still elements of them that are fun, whether it's a mystery of the Magier twins in some insane town that's connected to the abyss, or whether it's Sturm and Kitiara going on a Gnomish ship up to the moon of Lunatari. Like, there's some insane stories that just don't hit the mark. But there's moments of them. You're just like, oh, that's fun, you know? Or it tells a time, and they're just like, oh, that's interesting. In the greater scope of Dragonlance, it becomes interesting. Isolated and unto itself, kind of hot garbage. But that's life, isn't it? Like, we have moments in life that are just hot garbage and we just want to get past them, or we hate being in them. But once we're past them, they, like, what we learned from that informs how we move forward and informs how we deal with situations that are similar to that we had to go through. Adolescence, puberty is certainly one where I would not want to revisit, but I certainly learned a lot of things in. You know what I mean? So if you just take life as a learning experience, including Dragonlance novels, then you'll come out better. I'm reaching here. I don't know. I'm reaching. All right, what else do we have? You don't hate the book, you remember, read the series ages ago, book had an odd order to it. Yeah, for sure. The Warriors trilogy, or the Warriors 7 books, they're not like in a narrative order. Only the Pirvan books were sort of connected, and they were interspersed between others. So the next one, for example, is Marquest Carthon, the woman who captained the ship that Raceland pops, like, jumps out of with the dragon orb in Spring Dawning, and Tanis and Karaman and Teak and everyone get down in the Parashon, is it? I think it's the Parashon. In any case, I'm looking forward to that one. All right, let's see. Ever read the Rift War Saga? I'm not familiar with that, Corey. The Rift War Saga. I don't think I've ever heard of that. No, I haven't. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. Let's see. Brothers Majir was a good story. I'm glad you liked it. I struggled with it. How you doing, Jason? Thanks for tuning in. All right. So basically, that's all I have for this review. And let me sort of encapsulate it like this. It was a bait and switch title. It wasn't a terrible story, but it didn't particularly feel like a good Dragonlance story. It did a great job of grounding the era that it was released in. And for that, I appreciate it. And I know that it's the first of 4 novels about this character and the Knights of Solamnia. And this was just the first one. And so it didn't really go into the Knights in this one. But I believe that the next ones are going to be specifically about the Knights. And so I look forward to that. And so if I just think of this as a preface, I'm okay with it. So with that in mind, I think if you're a fan of Dragonlance, if you like piracy adventures, if you're a romantic like I am, then you're probably going to enjoy this, even though it's an awkward romance. But if you're just going to this for a great Dragonlance Knight story, you're going to be wildly disappointed, and the writing isn't that great. But that's kind of the case for most Dragonlance stories, so I don't know if it's worth even mentioning. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That is all I have to say about Knights of the Crown by Roland Green. What did you think of the introduction of Pirvan? Would you prefer a more knight-focused story? And finally, do you like the cover of a novel having something to do with the contents of the novel? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. All those things go to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. So, this channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of DragonLance Saga. I thank you for joining that celebration. Until next time, my name is Adam for DragonLance Saga. Slán Javar.